It's 7 p.m. in London. This is The World Today with Marianne Mashiri. President Zelensky says there are two outstanding issues in talks with Washington over the shape of a peace proposal with Russia. Venezuela accuses the US of theft and piracy after American forces seize an oil tanker off its coast. Meanwhile, Venezuela's opposition leader Maria Corina Machado speaks exclusively with BBC News after a secret journey to receive her Nobel Peace Prize in Norway.
Venezuela has turned into a nation, a country in which the state applies terrorism.
Unprecedented. Flu cases jump sharply in England as hospital bosses say the health service is facing a worst-case scenario. Also coming up on The World Today, scientists find a key chemical in dark chocolate that may slow aging. A very warm welcome to The World Today on BBC News. Volodymyr Zelensky has revealed details of Kyiv's updated version of a plan to end the war with Russia. The Ukrainian president has confirmed that a revised version of the 20-point proposal was handed to the United States yesterday. Key sticking points include the status of the eastern Donetsk region, currently partially controlled by Russian forces, and also control of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. Well, another meeting of Ukraine's allies also took place today. President Zelensky says the coalition of the willing is working to ensure security guarantees include serious components of European deterrence and is working with the US to support that. He also said there must be a greater protection of lives in Ukraine for diplomacy to work towards a just peace. Meanwhile, the White House press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, has been speaking in the last few minutes and said President Trump is extremely frustrated with both Kyiv and Moscow over the war.
The president had a call with Europeans yesterday. His special envoy Witkoff and his team continue to talk with both sides literally as we speak. If there is a real chance of signing a peace agreement, if we feel like those meetings are worthy of someone on the United States' time this weekend, then we will send a representative. It's still up in the air whether we believe real peace can be accomplished and we can truly move the ball forward. The president is extremely frustrated with both sides of this war, and he's sick of meetings just for the sake of meeting. He doesn't want any more talk. He wants action. He wants this war to come to an end.
Well, meanwhile, the head of the NATO military alliance says its member states are Russia's next target. Mark Rutte said many people were too complacent about the threat and failed to see the urgency, calling on European nations to rapidly increase defence spending. Our security correspondent Frank Gardner has the very latest.
Under pressure to make peace with Russia. Ukraine's president receiving a peace stamp from scouts today. He says the problem is the US envisages Ukrainian forces withdrawing from parts of Donetsk Oblast, while Russian forces would supposedly not enter those areas. That part of Donetsk that Ukraine still holds and Russia wants would become a demilitarized economic zone. But would Russia also pull back its troops? The Russian army is advancing despite huge losses. President Putin says if Ukraine won't give up the last bit of the Donbass, he'll take it by force. Today, his foreign minister slammed Zelensky's peace proposals.
This is once again a return to the sad logic of Zelensky's so-called peace formula, which had the sole purpose of concentrating all attention on supporting the current neo-Nazi regime without changing its essence.
Russia's strategy to batter the Ukrainian population into giving up and giving in to Moscow's will. But Ukraine isn't giving up, and it's still fighting back. All 4 of Moscow's airports had to shut down operations today as Ukraine sent 300 drones into Russia. This afternoon, the so-called coalition of the willing held another video call. Europe worries the US is forcing a deal favouring Moscow, while NATO's chief says these are dangerous times.
Conflict is at our door. Russia has brought war back to Europe. And we must be prepared for the scale of war our grandparents and great-grandparents endured.
Just released these images of President Zelensky discussing the latest proposals with the Americans. The fact is, Ukraine is losing not just land, but America's support. Donald Trump wants it to hurry up and sign a deal however painful. Frank Gardner, BBC News.
Well, I spoke to Senior Director of the Foundation for Defence of Democracy's Centre on Military and Political Power, Brad Bowman, for his analysis on the updated version of this peace plan.
My analysis is that this plan is better than the 28-point plan, which was a plan that only Putin could love. This is better, but it's still highly problematic. And if you're talking about this economic zone, what has in common with the 28-point plan is Ukrainian forces withdrawing. And I'm a little confused why we would ask the democracy that was invaded to withdraw and consistently have a reflexive position in Washington that is supportive of the autocratic invader. And my worry is that Washington has failed to impose sufficient consequences on Putin. In fact, all of the sticks have been for the invaded, and all the carrots have been for the invader. And it's no wonder Vladimir Putin is unwilling to negotiate in good faith. So I think Putin hopes that this plan will portray Ukraine as the problem, when in fact the real problem is the worst invasion in Europe since World War II. And the national security strategy of the Trump administration, released on Friday, was talking about the problem being lack of self-confidence in Europe and NATO expansion. Those are talking points only Putin can love. The real problem here is Putin's brutal war of conquest.
Well, the UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres has warned against actions that could destabilise Venezuela. It's all after the Venezuelan government accused the United States of blatant theft and piracy following the seizure of an oil tanker by US troops off its coast. Well, the US Attorney General Pam Bondi said the tanker, which was transporting oil from Venezuela and Iran, had been sanctioned by the US for years due to its involvement in an illicit oil shipping network supporting foreign terrorist organisations. Well, the US Homeland Security Secretary has called the seizure a strike on a drug-running regime.
The operation that was conducted yesterday morning was a Coast Guard-led operation. It was in partnership with the Department of War and the Department of Justice, the FBI as well, and it was a successful operation directed by the President to ensure that we're pushing back on a regime that is systematically covering and flooding our country with deadly drugs and killing our next generation of Americans.
In the last half an hour, the White House press secretary has also been asked about the seizure of that tanker and why it was done.
There are two things that are very important to this administration. Number one, stopping the flow of illegal drugs into the United States of America, which we know has killed hundreds of thousands of Americans. The president promised on the campaign trail that he would demolish the foreign terrorist organizations and drug cartels around the world, especially right here in our own hemisphere, and you have seen that he is delivering on that promise. With respect to the oil and what happened yesterday, the Department of Justice requested and was approved for a warrant to seize a vessel because it's a sanctioned shadow vessel known for carrying black market sanctioned oil to the IRGC, which you know is a sanctioned entity. So the president is committed to stopping the illegal flow of drugs into our country. He's also fully committed to effectuating this administration's sanction policy, and that's what you saw and the world saw take place yesterday.
Well, let's cross live now and speak to our North America correspondent, Nomia Iqbal. We're hearing there the pushback from the US, the justifications, but what do you think the US is trying to achieve here?
Well, look, the answers by the Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt were pretty vague in that we didn't really get a sense of if seizing oil tankers is the start of a new strategy by President Trump. I mean, she didn't really answer that question if it was. We got more details from the White House and what they think that oil tanker is. Instead, what we heard from Ms. Leavitt is the usual line that the Trump administration is giving in terms of why they are carrying out the strikes that they are, why they're going after Venezuela. They say it's because it's to stop alleged drug traffickers and to stop the flow of drugs into the US, but there's never really been any evidence so far of that, and it's all been done on a very flimsy legal pretext, according to many legal experts. But there's no doubt that there's this tension escalating, and it's not just the Venezuelan president. Donald Trump has also warned the Colombian president he will be next. And Caroline Leavitt was actually asked about that. What does that exactly mean? Because Mr. Trump had said that that President Petro had better wise up or he'll be next. He then invited President Trump to Colombia to see for himself how authorities are working there to combat drug trafficking. And she said that she would leave President Trump to respond to those comments by Mr. Petro.
So what are the next moves potentially from the US with regards to Venezuela and the region?
Well, Mr. Trump has been saying that there could be land strikes. And it's worth mentioning that there are lots of military options that the US has when it comes to those strikes. It doesn't necessarily mean ground invasion, boots on the ground. There's strikes by sea, by air. Now, whether or not that will happen, we don't know, because the White House hasn't given us any indication of when that could possibly happen. I think this is about exerting pressure on the Venezuelan president, who basically stepped down to resign in peace. But Mr. Maduro, the Venezuelan president, says he won't be doing that. So how much the US plans to do that? I mean, the consequence of that would be huge, of course, not just in terms of what it means for Venezuela, but also here in the US, especially given that President Trump has long said that he does not believe in an intervention in countries abroad. It would be going against his own policies. But as I say, President Trump has long argued that this is all about trying to stop drug trafficking, although Venezuelan officials believe that it's about regime change and to try and basically take Venezuela's oil resources. But as of yet, Mariam, it's all pretty unpredictable.
Nomia, thank you. Well, meanwhile, Venezuela's opposition leader, Maria Corina Machado, who was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize yesterday, has said she's very hopeful her country will be free and become a beacon of democracy for the world. She was smuggled out of Venezuela, where she was in hiding, to travel to Oslo to receive the award. Well, this was the moment she was greeted by supporters in the Norwegian capital, the first time she's been seen in public since January. The opposition leader said the regime of Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro was sustained only by violence and repression, and she paid tribute to those who helped her get to Europe.
I want to take advantage of your question to thank all those men and women that risked their lives so that I could be here today. One day I will be able to tell you, because certainly I don't want to put them in risk right now. It was quite an experience, but I think it's worthwhile being here with you, telling the world what's happening in Venezuela, what it means to you as Norwegians and as Europeans, or from all the places where you come from, why Venezuela matters for the world. I mean, when you fight for freedom, you're fighting for humanity. And when we win, because we will, this will be an extraordinary example for those countries that today do not have freedom, and that people are telling them what we used to hear, that it was impossible to achieve it. And we decided to fight until the end, and Venezuela will be free.
Well, considered one of the country's most respected voices in Venezuela's political opposition, Maria Corina Machado has long denounced President Nicolás Maduro's government as criminal and called on Venezuelans to unite to depose it. She was barred from running in last year's presidential elections, in which Maduro won a third six-year term in office. The vote was widely dismissed on the international stage, though, as neither free nor fair, and many nations view his rule as illegitimate. Well, the Maduro government has repeatedly threatened her with arrest, accusing her of calling for a foreign invasion and labelling her a terrorist for protesting against the election results. Well, shortly after arriving in Oslo, Maria Corina Machado sat down with my colleague Lucy Hawkins for an exclusive and wide-ranging interview in the Nobel suite of Oslo's Grand Hotel. She was asked about President Trump's escalations of military tensions with Venezuela and whether she would support US strikes on Venezuelan soil.
President Trump has offered Maduro, and he has said it publicly several times, to go through a peaceful process to dismantle the criminal structure, and has insisted that the criminal activities have to stop, which has not happened on the contrary. So we didn't want a war We didn't look for it. The Venezuelan people want to live, in democracy and freedom, justice. It was Maduro who declared war on the Venezuelan people with state terrorism and abroad with narco-terrorism.
But is that a reluctant yes, then, that you would support that?
What we have asked, and I've been very insistent in this, is the international community to help us stop the flows of resources, criminal resources, which are used by that regime for repression of the Venezuelan people or innocent Venezuelans. Where those resources come from? Drug trafficking, gold trafficking, even human trafficking. And many of these resources end up in, the financial systems of democracies.
That's Maria Corina Machado there talking to Lucy Hawkins. Let's take a short break. Still to come on The World Today. A wave of so-called superflu sweeps through the UK. We'll be inside one of the hardest hit hospitals. Around the world and across the UK, this is The World Today on BBC News. Hundreds of people are being admitted to hospital in the UK every day with flu amid a sharp rise in cases. NHS bosses say there's an unprecedented wave that's leaving health services facing a worst-case scenario in the run-up to Christmas. The Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, has urged resident doctors to do the responsible thing and call off their planned strike next week. Now, on average, more than 2,600 patients were in hospital every day last week with flu in England. That's a jump of 55% on the week before. Flu cases are also rising in Scotland, with nearly 1,000 people admitted to hospital in the first week of December. Meanwhile, in Wales, the number admitted with flu that same week was up 12%. That's just over 160 people. Northern Ireland saw new flu cases jump by almost a quarter to more than 1,000. Our health editor Hugh Pym has spent 2 days at Leicester Royal Infirmary to see how much pressure the hospital is under.
Oscar has suspected bronchiolitis,
Take that out.
a viral bug affecting young children.
Buddy.
His worried mum was sent here by the GP.
Hey. Oh, good boy. Quick listen at the back. We may just keep you overnight, see how he's at night time, and if we're happy that he's getting better.
And Oscar isn't alone. Winter viruses are hitting young lungs hard.
The last half an hour, there's been about 30 children who have all arrived. I think it is putting a lot of pressure on the system, and I think every year it seems to be increasingly busier.
Paige has type 1 diabetes. She also has flu. Her blood sugars are dangerously high. Doctors can bring her diabetes under control, but recovering from flu will take longer.
We can try to create some space to accommodate patients who are coming to recess when the recess is full.
As the waits get longer, we see clinical staff getting increasingly frustrated. To make space for the most sick, patients need to be moved between rooms.
So what's happening now?
So we have a very busy waiting room. Within those patients, some are needing medical input, but we do see patients who arrive who, for whatever reason, probably could have received their healthcare either from a GP or a pharmacist.
The hospital has got a new system in A&E. Consultants and other senior clinicians near the front door send the less sick patients elsewhere. Some, though, are not happy.
You'll see the glass that we've got around the reception desk here, and that was put in following an incident of a patient who got quite angry with the team.
But at the other end of the spectrum, the very ill are also walking in the front door. Saad is the consultant here who picks up the most sick.
You can bring her to room 3, Julie. We can take her around. There are patients in every cubicle, a lot of activity happening. One ambulance has just rocked up. Ellie's the consultant here, has to be in here.
Yes.
This is the busiest emergency unit in England.
We'll have a look.
Many more beds are needed than are available.
She's got some kind of respiratory virus. She was very tight chest when she came in.
Flu and winter viruses are hitting the unit hard.
This is the asthmatic chap who's on high flow oxygen.
We're seeing a significant increase over the winter months with flu, on both coming into our emergency department and our assessment units.
And how much pressure is that putting on the system?
It's putting a lot of pressure on the system.
As more patients arrive, others wait outside.
The sickest patients are taken straight into the emergency department, but there are 7 other vehicles waiting to hand over their patients.
More than 900 patients needing urgent care are coming into the hospital every day.
He's getting intubated now. That bing is just because your heart is going at around 150, 160 beats a minute, so it is going pretty fast.
The hospital is planning to open up more beds to cope with the likely further surge.
Do you feel you're doing all you possibly can with what you've got?
At this point in time, I feel we are working at the limits of our ability, but undoubtedly over the next couple of months the NHS will become busier and the way in which we work will have to evolve.
Back in the emergency department, this is the reality now for Julie.
This is our high dependency area and we've been really struggling for beds. I'm sorry, no, it's not ideal, but we'll get you into a bed space as soon as we can.
I mean, how long are some of them waiting?
So some of them are waiting 2 days plus.
In the department?
In the department, yes. Yes, I never imagined that it would get to this, that we would have patients, so many patients in the emergency department, and we worry about those patients and the care they're receiving.
But they all know with flu there could be worse to come. Hugh Pym, BBC News, Leicester.
Well, let's cross live now and speak to Dr. Chris Smith, consultant virologist at Adam Brooks Hospital and presenter of the Naked Scientist podcast. It's lovely to speak to you, Chris. Thank you so much for joining us. And I guess people watching this are going to be asking themselves, why is it so bad this year?
I think there's a range of factors, and one of them is that it's winter, and flu always comes in winter. The other factor is that the form of flu which has come this year, H3N2, hasn't circulated appreciably for a couple of seasons. And what that's done is to encourage people's immune systems to forget how to fight it off. And the third factor is that when that virus left the southern hemisphere in their winter and made its way up to the northern hemisphere for our winter, it changed. All viruses change and mutate. They do it all the time. Flu's no exception. It's gained a handful of mutations this time that have further changed the appearance of the virus. And this makes it harder for our immune systems to recognise it. So any pre-existing immunity we had to this is weakened. And when you bring all those factors together, you tend to see more people catching it, and the more people who have it, the more there are to give it to other people. And there will be people who have got less immunity than others. They're going to get a worse dose of it, and that's why we're tending to feel it a bit harder this year.
And the flu vaccine, will that cover you? If you've had that, would you recommend going to get that?
That's the wrinkle, because it takes about 6 months to make the flu vaccine each time, because what happens is that laboratories like the one I work in all around the world are sending to the World Health Organization samples of the flu that they're picking up and diagnosing all the time. And the WHO, the World Health Organization, are comparing what's circulating and what that looks like with what's in the vaccine. And they're asking the question, will this vaccine defend against these circulating strains of the flu? And if at any point the virus shows signs of mutating so that that will no longer be the case, they update the vaccine.
Right.
But because it takes 6 months to update the vaccine, you've got to work ahead and you've got to guess what path do we think the virus is going to take so we can build that vaccine roadblock down the road so that when the virus gets to us, we're ready for it. But sometimes the virus does a sort of genetic handbrake turn.
But does having the vaccine help, even if it's not quite the right one?
Well, it can do. And no vaccine is definitely worse than some vaccine that's a slight miss. And there's two reasons for that. Number one reason is that some immunity is better than no immunity. The second point is that it isn't just H3N2 flu that circulates in winter. There are actually three forms of flu that will circulate in any given winter. H3N2, which we're seeing this year, H1N1, also known as swine flu, and another form of flu called flu B. All three are represented in the vaccine. All three circulate in wintertime, but usually one of them is more common. So yes, the H3N2 is slightly off in the vaccine this year, but the other two are there, and we do think they're going to work. So you've definitely got a lot to gain from
We haven't got a lot of
vaccine.
time. We're running out of time. We've got about 40 seconds. What advice would you give to people now who are worried about flu? Obviously, crowded places, Christmas, family events. What can we do?
Number one thing, if you haven't had a vaccine and you're entitled to get a vaccine because you're vulnerable, please do have a flu vaccine. It takes about 2 or 3 weeks to build enough antibodies to be well protected. So do that now ahead of Christmas, and then the rest of the time use common sense if you can. If there's a crowded place and you know that there are going to be lots of people there who might have the flu and you're vulnerable, consider whether or not that's the best place for you to go while it's circulating at the moment. OK, Chris Smith, thank you so much for that advice and for joining us on The World Today. You're watching The World Today. Let's take a short break. See you in a few minutes.
Hello, thanks for joining me. We're approaching the middle of December, but the weather across much of Europe is very mild at the moment. In fact, the whole continent here is experiencing temperatures a few degrees higher than the norm this time of the year. The north of Scandinavia, a little colder here with some snow. It's been mild because we've seen these weather systems sweeping off the Atlantic here, spreading into Ireland, the UK. The milder air has been pushing eastwards. And then to the south, we've got an area of high pressure where relatively mild air is locked in, and it's also quite sunny and calm. And the fine conditions are expected on Friday across Greece, much of the Mediterranean here, all the way to eastern parts of Spain. But in the west here, we've got rain for Portugal, rain for northwestern parts of Spain, a little bit of rain moving through the UK, and that milder weather spreading into southern Scandinavia. But in the north, that's where the really cold air is. You can see snow there moving through Norway and into Sweden as well. But the high pressure with that relatively warm air mass is locked in over the weekend across the bulk of the continent. So we're talking about the mid-teens for Bordeaux, about 8 for Bern, and temperatures will be anywhere between 6 and 9 Celsius there from Warsaw to Berlin. Now, the outlook for the next few days shows the mild conditions continuing in London and in Paris, and it's going to be quite changeable there in Iberia with rain at times. Colder weather, though, a little bit colder there in Kiev, but still generally above freezing. That's it from me. Thanks for watching.
I'm Nomsa Masego, the BBC's Southern Africa correspondent, and I'm based here in South Africa, which recently hosted leaders from around the world for the G20 summit. Officials here hoped that the summit would allow the country to champion issues vital to developing nations. But despite attempts to downplay it, the meeting was dominated by Donald Trump's very public decision not to attend. The contrast between global diplomacy and local reality is stark in Johannesburg itself. Its central business district, once a symbol of wealth and power during the apartheid era, fell into decline after big businesses moved out. Over time, gangs moved in. BBCI has gained unprecedented access to these buildings to uncover a story of organized crime, political corruption, and squalid living conditions that shame this city.
We're seeing scenes of destruction like this one across Mandalay, and the reality on the ground is there just aren't enough pairs of hands to dig through the rubble.
He's been firing rubber bullets at the direction of the crowd, and it shows you just how volatile the situation is.
The scale of damage in Black River is breathtaking. Home after home completely obliterated. Virtually none of them have roofs. It's going to take people here many, many months to recover.
Thousands of people have come here to the centre of Seoul this evening. They have come to celebrate the newly elected president, Lee Jae-myung.
Given the scale of the attacks we've seen over the past 48 hours, it doesn't feel like we're in ceasefire territory.
There, when the story breaks,
BBC News.
We're here in Washington to find out what comes next.
Neither Vladimir Putin nor Donald Trump was able to say that they had agreed a ceasefire in Ukraine.
You can see this house has been completely washed away.
Not only at home, but around the world.
It's so easy to see all of the dead coral.
You can see the frustration and the desperation. There's simply no food.
Our correspondents give you the full story.
The residential area where the crash occurred is massive.
For a global perspective, join us on BBC World News America.
This is The World Today on BBC News. These are the headlines this hour. President Zelensky says there are two outstanding issues in talks with Washington over the shape of a peace proposal with Russia. Venezuela accuses the US of theft and piracy after American forces seize an oil tanker off its coast.